A plea deal is in place for the woman accused of...
All right, I'm going to remind you guys, this is not an SVU channel, but I do have what should be our final update on the trans slasher, aka Jaia Cruz, aka the person formerly known as Alvin Cruz. And spoiler alert, they have struck a plea deal. The family of the victim, Ray Hodge, is not happy.
Family members of the victim say they were hoping for a stiffer sentence.
In 15 years, her life goes on. Ray Hodge III, dead. Gone, not coming back. So, I have a problem with that.
And I really don't see how anybody can blame them.
During the physical altercation, the defendant stabbed the victim numerous times, resulting in his death.
The mom of a postal worker stabbed to death in a Manhattan deli slammed prosecutors Wednesday for striking a deal to let her son's ruthless killer take a plea deal for just 15 years behind bars. What's up, everybody? Ty Rivera here, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world. All right, so like I'm telling you guys, there is an update on Jaia Cruz, aka the trans slasher, aka the person formerly known as Alvin Cruz. For any of you that have been keeping up, there was supposed to be an update on March 5th. That's when the next court date was supposed to be. But I guess either nothing of consequence happened on that particular date, or that's what got pushed to this particular date. I was searching because I wanted to give you guys the update, and there was nothing. And so just randomly last night, I decided to check in, and I was like, what's going on with Jaia Cruz? And I went in and searched it, and that's when I saw that she had made this plea deal. Oh, let me tell you guys this really quick though before I go on. I am going to be performing a rare live performance from Ty Rivera. Will be happening on May 23rd in Los Angeles. That's right. I'll be in Los Angeles, California, May 23rd. If you want the details and a promo code for that, if you happen to be watching from LA or you're going to be in LA on Friday, May 23rd, go ahead and hit me up on Instagram. I'll put the link down below from my Insta, and I'll send you my promo code and the details and stuff like that. I'll also put a link down below to the 2 other videos that I made regarding this story and Jaia Cruz. So yeah, so I wanted to update you guys on the story, and then by the end, I'll go ahead and let you know what I think could possibly come from this that might be considered, I guess, somewhat good, and maybe a little bit of insight on why I think these kinds of things are happening. And yeah, let's get into it. And the reason that I decided to follow this story was because originally it was everywhere, because it happened on January 2nd, which, if you're not familiar with the situation at all,
we're hearing from an employee who tells us exactly how this all unfolded. He says it started right here while the two were waiting in line, fighting over who was first in line. Then that argument spilled over here to where the coffee machine is and got physical. And here's some new video of 24-year-old Jaia Cruz, who police identify as who allegedly stabbed to death 36-year-old Ray Hodge, a U.S. postal worker. And this employee tells us that it seemed as though Hodges was here first, and then Cruz crossed in front of him, and it sparked a whole argument. Here, take a listen to what he said.
I separate them. The male guy in the front, the lady, she was in the back. She's spilling him in his face, and male guy, he get mad because she's spilling him. So he was lemon juice next to the coffee machine. He throw on her. So she took the knife. This is so bad. This is my first time I see this happen from my face.
And this all unfolded yesterday at around 2:30.
And Jaia Cruz was originally reported as just having been a woman, and it was all over the news. It was on every outlet, every place you could imagine. The headline over and over, woman, woman, woman. And so what happened was, eventually this woman, Jaia Cruz, ended up getting arrested. And when they put out the video of her getting arrested, everybody was like,
freeze! Holy shit, it's Bigfoot! Hey, keep it in the circus! That's a huge bitch!
Which, believe me, I don't find this story funny, but I do find it funny that the internet is always going to internet. So, of course, the internet just started really driving home the fact that this was not a woman. This was a trans person that had done this. And then some people were going the route of this is a man, which I don't care how anybody talks. I have to watch how I talk on YouTube. So if I say something you don't like on this particular one, as far as pronouns or something like that goes, just understand I do have to abide by YouTube's rules. So just forgive my language and my censoring because it's what I have to do in a story like this. But what I'm trying to get at is once this story really broke and then the details started coming out, suddenly the news got real quiet about it. And the reason that I think the news started to get quiet about it was because it didn't fit anybody's narrative. Because you have Jaia Cruz, who is a trans woman. Oh, I'll also mention really quick that they put her in a woman's jail. That was the other thing that they did that really got people in an uproar. And for good reason. I understand why people had that reaction to it. She obviously should have been put in the men's facility. Even if she's put in protective custody, her own cell, definitely should have been on the male side. But they had put her in the women's at that time. So that was a big part of it too. So then the trans activists jump in and people that knew her from the New York scene because she's kind of a street person. Which when I say street person, for anybody that's not familiar, that doesn't mean a homeless person. Street people in a lot of cases when it comes to LGBT are people that live sort of like the show Pose, like, you know, that kind of street life where they're in the clubs and part of the ball scene and have your play on words with balls. But that's what it's called. They have these balls. They do though. They have balls and they vogue and do stuff like that and have contests and pageants and that kind of thing. That's what I mean by the ball scene. I really need to grow up, but let's get back. I guess I better have my fun now because it gets serious on this. So I'm gonna let you guys hear what's going on with the agreement and stuff like that. And then I'll go ahead and read a story to you because I had to really piece this together because like I said, it hasn't really been mainstream. And I really do feel that that's because Jaia is at least biracial. The trans activists describe her as being a black trans woman. But if you look at Jaia, there obviously is some sort of mix there. Either that or just very light skinned. But the fact that she unalived a black man doesn't fit the narrative because if it had been a white man, then they would be able to say that it was racially motivated and transphobic. So then since it's a black man that got unalived, if he had been unalived by a white person, then they could easily say again that it was racially motivated and it would get the BLM people's ears perked up. But since it didn't fit any kind of narrative and you couldn't play the poor trans woman card because it turned out Jaia has a checkered past, which like I said, you can see that in the other videos. It will be the pinned comment. But she has a checkered past where she's been known for carrying around a poker at different points. And then the way that she handled the whole thing was saying some really vile stuff like I hope he's maggot food, and there was other things that she said that were what you could call, I guess, racist if she wasn't considered to be a black person herself, which I've seen people still trying to go that route and saying that this is about protecting white people. But Jaia isn't a white person, and even if you didn't think she was black, she doesn't look like a white person, so you can't really say that. And I think that it's a really unproductive route to go down in a situation like this, because I can guarantee you anybody that's racist, like you're trying to imply when you say that it's looking out for white people, doesn't see Jaia as a white person. By the hair alone, that's not what you consider a white person. And the trans activists at first were trying to make it seem like Jaia was not only a total victim, but that the entire world, including the news outlets, were being transphobic and referring to Jaia as a man and being disparaging in that way, which was a really weird way to go at it because like I said, that was the original controversy, was that they had only described Jaia as being a woman, not even trans in front of woman, just said woman. So it was like the trans activists were trying to gaslight us in real time, and because of that, they were trying to make it seem like Jaia should have just walked because the world was being transphobic. And then video surfaced of Jaia getting jumped on the streets of New York, which is a terrible thing. And I do feel like if the trans activists wanted to find anything productive about this, or where they could maybe spread the word about something, maybe that's something they could talk about from this story, is that there are a lot of trans people walking around right now with a lot of trauma that are kind of on the verge of doing something like this. And mind you, I'm not excusing it, and I'm not saying that it's a reason that it should happen. But what I am saying is that it's a reason that things like this do happen. And I don't think that the LGBTQ community helps at all with the narratives they push that everybody's against trans people. Because when you have, in reality, transphobia, which I mean actual transphobia, not somebody not respecting your pronouns or things like that, it had been documented that even though Jaia may have had her own bad behavior as well, that there was a fair amount of violence that was happening to them. Like, there was one person that mentioned that they knew Jaia before they transitioned to Jaia back in high school, and that they were a really nice, quiet kid, but they were always getting picked on. And that's something that's not LGBT exclusive, although to talk about it in the trans light, I feel like I wouldn't be doing my duty as a gay elder. I said duty, but I feel like I wouldn't be doing my duty as a gay elder if I didn't mention that that's something that I think people need to be more aware of, even if you don't support trans, don't agree with trans, any of that stuff, which I get. And I would never try to tell anybody how to say anything or how to deal with any particular person. But what I would say is that there are people like this that are running around with a fair amount of trauma and could have a knife on them. And so you really do want to watch the way you deal with people. And so I say this just to make the point that while I don't think it's right and it should ever happen, I prepare for the world that I live in and not the world that I want to live in. So while I don't think that people should ever put their hands on each other, or I don't think that there should ever be an excuse for unaliving somebody, there are people out there that are walking around literally ticking time bombs waiting for something like this to happen. Like, there's different reports about the way that this went down, but Jaia definitely did, one way or another, however she acquired it, have a knife on her at the time that this went down. So she was ready to do something like this, and it was just a matter of who was going to be the victim, if you ask me. And so that's why I caution people that even if you don't agree with somebody or you're going to correct them, at least the minimum amount of respect, and this would go for anybody, gay, straight, trans, white, black, Latino, Asian, whatever they are, I would say just to offer at least the minimum respect, even if it's a correction that has to be made. Like, you're like, hey, excuse me, you cut me in line, that type of thing. And things could escalate from there, but to do your best to de-escalate it in this day and age, to me, is a reasonable thing to ask people to keep in mind, and for your own safety, not because of the other person or that you're trying to tiptoe around them, because things could get out of hand like this. So let me play this video for you guys so you guys can see what the plea deal was, and then I'll read the article from the New York Times, because I think there were some important things that were left out from the newscast that I saw about it that were actually contained in the New York Times article. So here's the clip. Also, like, comment, and subscribe. We're trying to see how fast we can get to 100,000 subscribers. We just passed 80,000. Thank you all very much. When you click the subscribe button, make sure you check the bell to select all notifications so that you know every time I upload. Now, let's get back to this story.
Jaia Cruz pled guilty to first-degree manslaughter and in turn was promised to 15 years in prison with 5 years of supervised release. The 24-year-old is accused of stabbing and killing Ray Hodge, who lives here in Mott Haven, back in January. According to witnesses, the two were inside a deli on Lenox Avenue in Harlem when an argument broke out over who was first in line to order. Hodge was stabbed 5 times in the chest, neck, and arm. The 36-year-old was a U.S. Postal worker and was on his lunch break at the time of the attack.
Okay, so now you guys know what the deal is, and then this New York Post article really does help clear some things up that I don't know why they didn't include in the story. And I don't know why the stories were so short when, like I said, this was on its way to being the biggest story in the world until they decided, you know what, let's put a lid on this one. So the headline of the New York Post article is, Mom of postal worker killed in New York deli stabbing slams plea deal for 15-year sentence. She'll get out early and kill again. The mom of a postal worker stabbed to death in a Manhattan deli slammed prosecutors Wednesday for striking a deal to let her son's ruthless killer take a plea deal for just 15 years behind bars.
The people have made the determination to offer a plea to manslaughter in the first degree with a promised sentence of 15 years in prison to be followed by 5 years post-release supervision.
And I know some people would say that no matter what they had given Jaia, the mother would never be satisfied. And I can completely see that the sentence for killing your child will never match up to the pain that you're going to experience from losing your child and from the amount of justice that you probably feel should be in order when your child is unalived, especially in such a brutal way, and he had children. But I also do agree that 15 years seems like a light sentence for taking away a life. Jaia is 25 now, so in 15 years, Jaia is going to be 40, and you can still live a great life from 40 and up. So providing that she makes it out of prison, which some people are saying things in the comments like, she'll never make it out of prison. I think that she probably will make it out of prison. I personally think she's gonna thrive in prison because from her ex account, she's a very active trans woman and that kind of thing is going to be in demand. And I think that she's going to live a privileged life in prison. So I definitely do understand the mother being like, 15 years is nothing. She's going to get out early and kill again, Ada Rice told the Post after Jaia Cruz, 24, pleaded guilty to first-degree manslaughter in the January 2nd slaying of USPS postman Ray Hodge at Joe's Deli Grocery in Harlem. The plea deal comes less than 3 months after prosecutors indicted Cruz on a second-degree murder charge for the broad daylight killing, which carries a maximum prison sentence of 25 years to life. See, so 25 years and to get 10 years taken off of that, so only serving 15, and then to bring it down from second-degree murder to manslaughter in the first degree, that also probably feels a little bit like a slap in the face. But I also would think that there's more than one reason that they decided to strike this deal with Jaia, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But Hodge's mom said she was left stunned when Manhattan Assistant District Attorney Elizabeth Clerkin told Manhattan Supreme Court Judge Gregory Caro that Cruz expresses remorse and has asked to accept responsibility for Hodge's death.
Through counsel, the defendant has expressed her remorse and has asked to accept responsibility for the victim's death.
Despite prosecutors admitting Hodge's family opposed the offer.
I will note that the victim's family is opposed to any offer in this case.
And that's one thing. I did see the mother saying that she hadn't shown any remorse at the time.
He didn't apologize. She didn't show remorse initially in the beginning. She said she was happy when she was stabbing him. She said he was going to be maggot food. She enjoyed it. She told another reporter she hates black men. So I don't understand what the problem is.
And that's 100% true. Jaia said some really vile things, even when being interviewed by the police after the incident happened. But if you look at her during this video of when this is all playing out, you can see that she definitely has lost something in her eyes. And I really do think that it's similar to what I was talking about with the Carmelo Anthony situation, which, not to go into the details of that, but just as far as I've said that I think that his mind is going to be his prison, because these youngsters don't really understand that there is an emotional toll that it takes on you when you actually unalive somebody and when that sets in for you. And I don't want to sound old and blame like music or video games, but maybe it does have something to do with that, in the way that a lot of these youngsters don't really look at unaliving somebody as that big of of a deal. Like in their minds, they don't see it that way. And it's really weird the way that that plays out. Maybe it's too much exposure to too much technology at too young of an age, or maybe it's the fact that everybody's telling them that they're right for any amount of anger or aggression or violence that they may perpetuate because of being from a marginalized community, be that black, gay, trans, whatever your marginalized community is. You have people encouraging violence and making it seem like you're justified in any action that you take because the people you're up against are Nazis or transphobes or deserve it for whatever reason. And that too plays into it, in my opinion. That's why I say so many of the trans activists are really doing a disservice to young people like Jaia. Instead of the elders guiding her a different way, they instead seem to encourage that behavior and say that it was justified because of what trans women go through living in day-to-day life, especially if they're tall and they have a particular stature like Jaia does, which is a dead giveaway that Jaia is not an actual female. And so I think that too is where the LGBTQ community could take a little bit of responsibility and be like, yeah, we are kind of stoking these flames, and then once it burns out of control, we claim victim status for the entire community or the trans community specifically, when really at that point the victim is the person that has lost their life. And if you're a victim of anything, it's your own bad decisions and your own temper. Rice said she was left very upset with the judicial system, in part because she claims the Manhattan DA's office had told her they believed in the strength of the case, especially a video from inside the bodega which allegedly shows Cruz spar with Hodge after he cut her in line at the deli counter, which I don't know why they're reporting it that way or why they say it that way, because the actual witness, who was the guy behind the deli counter, said that Ray Hodge had gotten there first and Jaia had cut him in line. So maybe they just got it confused in this article. But by all accounts that I've seen, it was Jaia that cut Ray Hodge in line. Initially, the DA told me that there would be no plea deal because they said they saw the video and that they're satisfied, Ray said, who also expressed regret as to why Cruz hasn't been charged federally, which I know she's wondering why Jaia wasn't charged federally.
And it's not going to be a federal crime. They have no funds set up for your family or your children or your wife or your parents. Nothing.
But my guess would be that it was because the postal worker was on lunch, so he technically wasn't working at that time. That's the best I could imagine for it, because I know it is a big deal to mess with the postal worker, and especially this is more than just messing with the postal worker. But I would imagine that's a technicality that the post office is going off of for not pursuing it in the way of saying it's an actual attack on a federal employee. That would be my guess. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. And also, when she refers to the video from the bodega and the fact that the DA had kind of told her or hinted at that it was an open and shut case, that to me didn't seem believable from the beginning, because by all accounts, they were fighting each other. So if you're in a mutually combative situation, it does leave more room for self-defense.
Given the context of the stabbing death, including the rapidly evolving and escalating confrontation.
See, and that's what leads me to believe that there was going to be at least a reasonable amount of dispute as to what happened. The wording there, the rapidly evolving and escalating confrontation. But I think that's kind of the subtext that's going on here, is that it was a bit more than just one person attacking the other. And then I know that they were going to try to pull the same thing that I mentioned, but use it as a defense, where I just mention it as a factor that could make somebody fly off the handle. But do you think that the defense wouldn't actually bring into it the trauma that Jaia suffered from being bullied her entire life? That was definitely going to come into play, and there was going to be a psych evaluation, I'm sure, where they would determine that Jaia had gone through a certain amount of trauma and was dealing with a certain amount of PTSD. They would have brought race into it. Everything would have been brought into it.
And the other relevant sentencing considerations that are presented, including that the defendant makes this request early in the litigation of the case.
And according to Jaia's attorney, Ray Hodge had actually taken off his jacket and hit her first. So that's why I say, if the video actually showed that, I think that could give more reason. And then the fact that he did throw a bottle of lemon juice at her, I think that too could have muddied it a bit. So I think that's why they were open to taking a plea deal. And then obviously the defense, knowing that people would see the brutality of what Jaia did. Because like I said on a previous video, there's actually a picture of the floor before they cleaned it on X, the floor of the deli where it happened. And it had to be a brutal scene for the floor to look like that. Like, it was terrible. I can't even show you guys here because it's bad. And so I don't think that either side really wanted the whole story to come out because neither side was going to look good. So that's why I think it may not have been as open and shut. Which again, I know some people will get angry because a lot of people just go on emotion in these things, but for me, in some cases, you really do have to look at things in a logical way and the way that they would apply that when it comes to the law. I'm upset the person wasn't charged federally, she said. My son died in a federal uniform, which makes him a federal employee. The two then got into it when Hodge threw a plastic lemon juice bottle at Cruz before she began to stab him multiple times, prosecutors have said. When Hodge collapsed to the ground, Cruz stood over him and said he deserved it. Prosecutors said Cruz had requested an early resolution to the case. At the hearing Wednesday, one of Hodge's supporters had to be escorted out by court officers because she flipped out at the offer. This is not justice, the woman screamed inside the courtroom, according to witnesses.
Well, again, this is, I say it again because I've seen this before, another senseless act of violence over words. But I understand the people's position, and I will go along with that offer as an application.
Yes, Your Honor. My client authorized me to withdraw her previously entered plea of not guilty and plead guilty to the lesser included offense of manslaughter in the first degree in full satisfaction of this indictment.
All right, and your lawyer tells me that you wish to plead guilty to the Class B felony of manslaughter in the first degree. Is that what you want to do? Yes. Has anybody forced you to plead guilty? Has anybody promised you anything other than my promise to you that I will go along with the district attorney's recommendation and sentence you to a determinate sentence, 15 years, to be followed by 5 years?
You said you was happy to see him die. Cruz's attorney, Mitchell Schuman, did not immediately respond to comment regarding the plea deal. Schuman had accused Hodge of being the aggressor at Cruz's arraignment in January, claiming that the video showed he took off his jacket and struck her first, causing Cruz to react and stab him with the knife. See, so like I said, there's kind of a foot in the door right there for self-defense, and if you know that that's the way that the defense is going to come at it, and if the DA had seen the video and could see how a very sympathetic jury, possibly to trans, with the world we live in these days, would see Jaia as somewhat the victim and acting in self-defense, then you can see how, like I said, things could get murky. He also said that Hodge berated her with slurs before the altercation. As part of the plea deal, Cruz will also be sentenced to 5 years supervised release. She is expected to be sentenced on May 28th. All right, so like I said, I don't really think I'm going to do an update on May 28th when the sentencing happens, unless there really is something that comes out. Like maybe she has a heartfelt plea to the family or apology for the family, which I think, even though it's a very small thing, might at least make the mother feel better, because that's who I feel for in this situation, because that's your son, that's your baby, and however it went down, he's no longer with us. And then she says the post office is kind of doing her dirty. And I don't know if that's because of benefits, if that's what the post office's motivation would be. I don't know what they should get, or if there's life insurance involved when you're a postal worker. I don't know any of that stuff. And I don't know if that would be affected by this anyway. But I can understand what the mother's saying when she feels like she's been wronged on more than one level. I mean, not only is her son gone, but the post office doesn't even look at him with enough respect to treat it as if it was something that did happen to a federal employee. And so I do understand how that could be hurtful to the mother. So I will go ahead and do an update if there's something that comes out in that way. But to me, this is just a very unfortunate situation on all levels. And that's what I would really warn people about, because I don't think people fully understand that with a lot of Gen Z and even millennials to a certain degree, but more Gen Z seems to be kind of disconnected in that way and seems to be dealing with a different level of either trauma or PTSD or both. And I do feel like there is so much on social media that is stoking these young people to believe that they're under some sort of constant threat and that any means necessary to protect yourself, even if it's only against words, is the correct course of action and an excusable course of action. And so I guess in this kind of situation, just to sum it up, I think that it's a terrible thing that happened, and it's unfortunate for both parties. Obviously worse for Ray Hodge and his family because he'll never be back home. But if anything good can come from this, and one thing I wish that would happen with a person like Jaia, or for a person like Jaia, if she does make it out of prison, is that Jaia is able to turn her life around and help other young LGBT people understand that this is not the way to go. This is not the way to live, and not to buy into this narrative that the entire world hates you. And I know how easy it would be to fall into that, because maybe a lot of people don't realize that, but even I've dealt with a lot of that in my life. And sometimes it's used against me even currently because I am a Trump supporter. I'll have people telling me all the time, you know those people hate you anyway. You know those people hate you. Now imagine if I bought into that, because I know that's not true, because fellow Trump supporters have paid my bills for a long time, as far as when I was on the road. And yeah, they didn't do it as a Trump supporter because I was just a gay comedian working in redneck clubs, but those were all conservative people. And that was before they were Trump supporters that I was really working the road like that. And so that's why I say for a long time, these are the people that have been taking care of me. And I mean buying tickets to my shows, not only buying tickets to my shows, anytime I ever sold anything, they were buying it. They would follow me on social media. A fair amount of them watch my channel now. Like, these are all people that supposedly hate me. So imagine if you're a young person that has been bullied and does buy into that because you have experienced it, but it's not from conservatives. You're not realizing that that in a lot of cases is coming from other people that are more similar to you than they are different. Sometimes people build up these enemies in their head and don't realize that the enemy, one, doesn't really exist on either side in some cases. But if you're gonna look to somebody and you look to who they're telling you is supposedly your enemy, in some cases that person is not who it is at all. In some cases, another person that's in your same situation and has been fed the same kind of stuff and is coming at you a particular way too. And I don't know if any of that makes sense, but that's just the best way I can describe it, is that Jaia Cruz and Ray Hodge were probably more alike than they are different. They're both from New York, black and part black, or let's just say both black, or people of color, let's say. And they probably had similar struggles in life as far as New York life. And so it really shouldn't have escalated to that, but maybe you just had two people that neither of them were good at conflict resolution, and it was a powder keg situation. And while it's unfortunate that it had to happen, if anything good can come from it, maybe Jaia, even from prison in some way, can help LGBT youth understand that this isn't the way to go, or more specifically trans youth, that this isn't the way to go, and that there should be a different way to handle it. And maybe some good can come from it. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. If you want to see my most recent video, which is about the fall of LGBTQ pride, click the video on your screen. Other than that, as always, thank you for watching. This has been Ty Rivera, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world.
They bought into his bullshit.